Is there anything more cruelly crushing than a bad movie ending? I mean, there's no sensation quite like the sinking feeling that you get in your stomach once it becomes clear that, no, this director isn't going to stick the landing, this film's clever plotting won't last until the final frame, or the delicately balanced tone has gone out the window in time for the denouement. Well, sadly for us, those are the movies we're celebrating today. I'm Josh from Whatculture.com, and these are 10 great action movies ruined by terrible endings. Number 10, Law-Abiding Citizen. This gritty 2009 revenge thriller saw the filmmakers combine Saw-style torture porn with intense action sequences in order to craft a brutal but brilliant story. Here, Gerard Butler and Jamie Foxx both shine in their respective roles, the former as a broken man driven by a bloodthirsty desire for revenge, and the latter as the amoral lawyer ensnared in his ambitiously violent plot to enact justice. For most of its runtime, we're left with our sympathies firmly bouncing between protagonists, and as bloody-minded as Butler's character is, the uncaring cruelty of Fox makes him easy to root for through each successively bloodier sequence. That is, until the film's weak ending, wherein law and order are restored, the moral questions raised by the film are ignored, and we're reliably told that things won't get too brutal, lest the conclusion be too surprising or, God forbid, thrilling. Number 9, Baby Driver. For most of its runtime, Edgar Wright's 2017 sleeper hit Baby Driver is a charming and thrilling return to form for the director. Emerging from a scuffle with the MCU with his wit and singular style intact, Wright grafts the simple story of Baby, a getaway driver with a penchant for tunes. It's great, inventive, and the action comes thick and fast. But then comes the bizarre ending, wherein Baby and his love interest, a pair of star-crossed lovers on the lam from the law due to circumstances out of their control, just give up and go to jail. Well, okay, only Baby actually ends up in prison, but the corny conclusion smacks of self-serious morality and really just ends awkwardly as we cut to the future where Baby shrugs off his stint with a smile in an offensively unrealistic sequence. Yep, even for a film this larger than life and cartoony. Number 8, Savages. Oliver Stone's filmography is kind of a land of contrasts, with the thoughtful and articulate filmmaker behind Platoon, Wall Street, and Natural Born Killers also being responsible for 2008's maligned George W. Bush biopic W and, Wall Street 2: Money Never Sleeps. Perhaps the worst misstep in the director's recent on-screen history, though, has to go to 2012's Savages, a drug-trafficking thriller which sees its young stars caught in both an international smuggling ring and a love triangle, resulting in drug deals gone sour which cause all manner of violent fights, intense chases, and eventually an explosive closer wherein all of our heroes are brutally killed in DEA versus dealers crossfire. Just kidding though, that was actually only a dream sequence, and they turn out all right in the end. Seriously, nobody dies, including the film's villains. It's just, yeah, truly thrilling stuff. Number 7, 2012. Independence Day director Roland Emmerich's endings flop as often as they land, and this 2008 apocalyptic action-adventure is no exception to this rule. Already about an hour longer than it needs to be, this flick loses steam as soon as our hero John Cusack and his family have fled a rapidly self-destructing Los Angeles. So, what now, since the film has already fulfilled the trailer's promise of world-ending disaster action? Well, the few surviving cast members are left to fight over spaces on what is effectively a government-sanctioned Noah's Ark, and the epilogue reveals that the few stars left are going to be stuck stranded in the last landmass on Earth. What was probably intended as an environmentalist message instead comes across as an overtly obvious Christian metaphor, sapping the film's conclusion of any tension and leaving the until now impressive action feeling flat and uninspired. Number 6, Con Air. To be fair to Con Air, When a Stranger Calls Helmer Simon West's Die Hard on a Plane thrill ride is nearly perfect, and far better than either of the above aforementioned sci-fi duds ever come close to being. But the film's stellar cast, knowingly witty script, and insanely fun action sequences mean its stupidly excessive ending acts as an even bigger disappointment when it arrives. Whilst the film is, until the close, enjoyably over-the-top cheesy fun, it was unfortunately robbed of its original ending wherein our hero offs the lead villain and saves the day, in favour of an expensive and pointless sequence of destruction inserted solely so the producer could destroy a fictitious Sunset Strip. As a result, we're given an overlong sequence which tries to turn the flick into a full-scale disaster movie, and instead only succeeds in derailing audience goodwill. Number 5, I Am Legend. You knew this had to be on here. While I Am Legend is steeped in the horror genre, this Will Smith starring adaptation is still pretty much a blockbuster action film at heart, following the antics of Smith's Robert Neville, the sole remaining human, or so he thinks, following the entire world being decimated and the population transformed into vampire-like monsters. Still dedicated to saving the planet, Neville spends his days experimenting on the creatures he captures in the hopes of reverse engineering a cure. When he's not doing that, he's busy as a one-man extermination force, killing as many of them as he can possibly find. Now, this is important, as the source material uses this setup to drive home its thesis, that being the revelation that Neville isn't really a hero at all, but actually the monster of the story. This is a world that's no longer his, yet he's clinging onto it and punishing its new inhabitants without scrutiny. To the vampires in the movie, he's the monster coming out and killing them. This is something the film sets up as well, but infamously, the ending was changed to one where Neville is actually the good guy through and through, sacrifices himself to save humanity, and manages to craft a cure. Put simply, it's boring and nowhere near as memorable as the original. Number 4, Ong-Bak. Released in 2003, Tony Jaa's brutal debut is a stripped-back action thriller with almost no plot, which is clearly intended to showcase the extraordinary martial arts prowess of its star. And let us be the first to say that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Tony Jaa is an incredible performer and a born star, whose phenomenal prowess left audiences amazed thanks to the film's many superb fight sequences and genuinely thrilling chase scenes. So why spoil it all by killing off his likable co-star and comic relief George? The film's ending sees Jaa's right-hand man, the clumsy but well-meaning George, unceremoniously offed solely for the sake of cheap pathos. And it's an unnecessary move which detracts from the film's real appeal, those being the frequent holy crap moments prompted by Jaa's martial arts demonstrations. Number 3, Smokin Aces. Directed by the grey helmet Joe Carnahan, this flick is proof positive that the director is only capable of perfect endings, like that nihilistic flick's uplifting but brutal coda, or awful ones, like this film's profoundly pointless closing scenes. Following a rogues gallery of assassins as they attempt to take out Jeremy Piven's sleazy Vegas magician, the film sees FBI agents, hillbilly psychos, all manner of quirky criminals, and even a briefly cameoing Ben Affleck try to off the eponymous hero, leading to endless impressive gunfights and bloody brutal action sequences. And then the closing scenes reach for some kind of deep profundity, and the violent, hopeless ending amounts to Guy Ritchie trying to write Hemingway or something, trying to be bleak and portentous, which he nails to be fair, but also in a way that's laughably misjudged and tonally disastrous. Number 2, The Matrix Revolutions. There was no way we could keep one of the most infamous endings in action movie history off this list, and it's fair to say that despite the incredible opening chapter of their famous action thriller sci-fi trilogy, the Wachowski sisters more than earned this spot with the laughable closing scenes of the original Matrix trilogy. I mean, where to begin? The corny self-sacrifice, the reveal that the leader of the machines, who is literally named Deus Ex Machina by the way, is just happy to settle on peace after all, the eventual ending where our hero becomes a computer virus. There is a lot to take in here. Every techno-dystopia sci-fi cliche is present and cranked to 11 for this overstuffed ending. But at least the endlessly self-serious tone is good for a few guilty laughs. I mean look, the Smith vs Neo final fight is bonkers in a good way, but the dull grey sludge of the fighting back in the real world, that ain't the one. Number 1, Sucker Punch. Listen, we're well aware that Watchmen Helmer Zack Snyder's filmography has been the subject of some controversy over the years, but as muddy and incomprehensible as some of Superman and Doomsday's face-offs may have been, there's no denying that the director of 2004's Dawn of the Dead remake can helm an impressive action sequence. I mean, you look at Batman v Superman, and even if you don't like that movie, the one good action scene with Batman as he absolutely tools on a bunch of goons in a warehouse is awesome. It's what the whole film should have been. And whilst 2010's surreal asylum set Misfire Sucker Punch may have its problems, the film does feature some undeniably incredible action scenes as its ensemble cast of underrated young stars navigate the convoluted, occasionally moving, but at least consistently thrilling plot. But then comes the inane ending wherein we discover that this has all been a pre-lobotomy fantasy. Maybe. And as the audience are left wondering what on earth they just watched, this flick loses any hope of redeeming itself despite the until now impressive standalone scenes.